Yes. Hello,
Yes.
hello, everybody. It is myself and Dr. Nicole. We are 5 minutes beforehand, but we're just going to give people time to jump on and get in here. It is, what day is it? It's Thursday.
It is Thursday, June 27th. It's the
Perfect.
end of the month again already.
And I confirmed we are live.
All right.
Cool. All right. And we were just talking. We have a couple of minutes before we start. So I wanted to ask you, that we were just talking about the age of our children. Whenever my 2-year-old does this like random stuff, I just think this is what an underdeveloped frontal cortex looks like. Just, the impulsivity, the inability to like have a thought and just do it. Like,
Just do it.
why? How many times a day I ask the baby why? Just
Yeah.
why?
Absolutely. There's no for that. And unfortunately, because their poor little frontal lobes are not developed yet, it's like when you say, hey, don't touch that, they hear, touch it. They literally hear, touch what this? And then they right? That's why we say, always tell them what you want them to do. Like, come here, or try playing with this toy instead, because the do not and the don't doesn't really work at that age.
When does it fully develop?
Fully developed, 25.
It's a different age for male versus female, isn't there? Or not so much?
I heard the average is 25 when their
Okay.
full executive functions are completely operating. I know that once upon a time, there were even, when this research came out, they had said they were toying with the idea of moving the driver's limit to 25, and people were in uproar, reasonably so. But that's just because our logical side and our analytical side is not fully developed until 25. So yeah, it takes some time. This is why typically people that get married before 25, they're more likely to end up in divorce. But we're not talking about that today. We are talking about frontal lobes, but not in that aspect.
If I feel like we could end it at that. That was some child advice, some marriage advice, all in one session that has nothing to do with that.
Yes. Yeah.
But I see people joining on. Please let us know in the chat. Please let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. We're super excited to do this workshop. Dr. Nicole and I were gathering some stuff, a couple weeks ago and today, and we just realized we have so much to talk about that the most challenging thing today is going to be not to keep you guys all day as we geek out on these things that we enjoy talking about and teaching so much.
Yeah. And I can geek out.
Jump on in. We are going to start at 1:00 sharp because we know some people are joining in between lunch. So we'll start at 1:00 sharp. I see a bunch of people are live watching us on LinkedIn. I don't know why I keep saying Instagram. LinkedIn. We're also live on YouTube. So it's a great place to also catch us if that works for you all. And feel free to, let us know your name, let us know where you're from, anything you want to share. We'd love to hear it. We're going to be getting started in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So, what did you say the weather was where you were at?
Oh my goodness. It's not as bad. It's probably 85.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad. It's a nice summer weather.
I can get with the 80s. I just can't deal with like the hundreds that we've been having in Atlanta. It makes it unbearable. You can't do anything with your hair. You either have to be in a pool or indoors. And who wants to spend, the summers inside?
Yes, exactly. But it is a little cloudy though. So we're expecting some rain. It's been raining a lot here for us.
So, it's going to get humid.
It's going to get humid. Yeah.
All right, y'all. Let's go to class. Everybody ready? Are you ready? Are you guys ready?
Ready for this.
Today, Dr. Nicole and I are going to be talking about optimizing brain power and nutritional wellness to improve employee productivity. My name is Dr. Lauren Powell. I am a board-certified family medicine physician, and I am a culinary medicine specialist and a corporate wellness facilitator. I believe food is one of the most powerful drugs we have, and I believe it has the power to do good, and it has the power to cause harm. And so I like to teach about it in a variety of settings, in the clinic seeing patients, in workshops and teachings like this, and then also with organizations who are really committed to having happy and healthy employees. Dr. Nicole?
Amazing. Yes. So I am Dr. Nicole Murray. I'm a neuropsychologist. And so typically people actually don't know what a neuropsychologist is, because you don't typically need someone like me until after a major health event has happened. And so I'm the person people see when there's been some crazy life health change that's happened, whether it's stroke or a brain injury or cancer, MS, whatever it is. They come to see me and I evaluate and I say, hey, look, you can go back to work if you are doing these things, or maybe we should wait a little bit longer before you go back to work because you're going to have trouble here, here, and here. I also do a lot of assessment for ADHD and neurodevelopmental sorts of disorders, but basically anything to do with the brain is me. And that's what I do. I do the treatment, I do the assessment, I do all the things. And at the corporate level, I do some help with the hiring, making sure they're hiring the right people, and also the emotional intelligence aspect and promoting brain health and utilizing cognition to the best of people's abilities in their respective workplaces. So that is me in a nutshell.
That's a lot, Dr. Nicole.
It's a lot. And I'm a reformed plant parent. So I've had this plant for 2 years. I've not killed it. It's my longest plant ever.
That's good.
I'm pretty proud of that. And I just like to mention that in my intro as well.
That's good. That's impressive. I'm not well with plants at all.
Come on. I'll give you some tips.
All right. Well, I'm super excited for us to be here. You may be thinking, you've heard who I am, you've heard who Dr. Nicole is, and maybe you're like, what do you guys have in common? Why are you guys teaching about corporate wellness and keeping people well at work? Like, what do we have in common? The answer is a lot. The answer is a lot. And I feel like what we both have in common is wanting people to like be really, really well. And when I say that, optimized, right? Like not just, if I asked you if you can run, people would say, yeah, I can run. I mean, my legs function, I can run. But if you were to be put with a coach who coaches people on running marathons, and they coached you for weeks, they were on your nutrition, they would help you with your sleep, and then I asked you if you could run, that would be a different type of run, right? That would be a running that's optimized. And I feel like in our respective fields, that's what we really care about. We want people functioning at their best capacity, in whatever it is that they do. So I feel like that's what we have in common. And that's why we're hosting this seminar. So I thought we could start, Dr. Nicole, and just set the tone of like why this is important. Like why do team members, why do leaders need to care about the health and the well-being of their people? Like that's not something they're necessarily taught in education or training. And so why is that something we shouldn't even care about? I want you to go ahead and start, and then I'll kind of ask.
What a question. Okay. So there's a couple of reasons, right? And the two main ones that come to mind for me, the first one is just being a good person, right? Like the people that work for you, you want them to be happy, because if they're not happy, the output of the type of work that they will do will not be to the best of their ability. It's like, when you interview someone and they're like talking about their experience and they're so jacked about all of that, that's the person that you want working for you, not the person that's burnt out and that's stressed and all of that, right? And so part of it is you want to make sure that you're getting the best of your employees that they can offer. And the second part also is if they're not well, accidents happen, mistakes happen, and there's financial consequences to that. There's litigation consequences to that. There's all kinds of consequences to that. So I think it's really important that we are really attuned to the welfare of our employees, because the better they are, the better they feel, is the better they're able to work really and produce to a level that works for both you and them as well.
And as a physician, I'm like seeing the employee, right? The employee is my patient. I am the one that when they need to take medical leave, I'm working on their paperwork, right? I'm the one that's trying to manage their blood pressure when it's so high and I can't control it because they're so stressed and things at work. And so I think there's definitely a financial aspect to it as well. It's expensive when an employee can't work. Like that's
Mhm.
expensive for their healthcare costs.
Mhm.
That's a huge so absenteeism, um, reducing the number of sick days and the time that they're off, healthcare costs, accidents like you talked about. And I think employees really, they know when their employer isn't invested in them. And I think they appreciate when their employer isn't invested in their health. They know that and they
Mhm.
feel that. And it makes them more excited and happy to be at work. And I feel like when you feel well, you do your job well. Like,
Mhm.
if you don't feel good, there's no way you can show up to work and do spectacular, amazing things. It's just really not possible.
Right.
It's really not possible.
Right. And so there's like, and I think that deep down, I know everybody thinks about that. People kind of like they know, right? Like they know, like if I'm not happy, then I don't feel like working. But I guess what I wanted to highlight is that there's actually like a physiological process happening, right?
Yeah.
So when you're unhappy for so long, you have like reduced dopamine and reduced norepinephrine and all of these hormones that are literally coursing through your body. They're of course they're trickling now, right? Like, and so and so what ends up happening is it looks like poor motivation. It looks like, oh, I can't do this, and it looks like a lot of things that it actually is not. And so
Yeah.
that's like really important to kind of see like the deeper side of things as opposed to, oh, they're just unmotivated. It could be that very much so, but also motivation is also linked to a lack of these chemicals also that course through the brain. So yeah.
And so as I talk about, I kind of want to segue into, as a physician, as a culinary medicine doctor, talking about how our nutrition plays such a big role on our cognitive function and productivity.
Mhm.
I want to share this stat, and I wrote it down so that I can remember because I think this is important. I think in theory, we all know that our nutrition is important. I think we all know eating healthy is good and a thing that we should do. But I just want to remind, despite us knowing that, and being very clear, poor diets are linked to 50 billion in U.S. healthcare costs. Unhealthy diets account for almost 20% of those U.S. healthcare costs.
Mhm.
Those are, connected diseases like heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, cancers, um, fibroids, mental health. And so if you're taking medication, you may be treating the symptoms, but you're not necessarily treating the underlying cause of that condition. And so why what we're doing matters is because a Harvard research study showed that for every dollar that's spent on preventative wellness, medical costs decrease by $3.27.
Mhm.
Absenteeism drops by $2.73. And so that results in a 6-to-1 return on your investment. So I say that to say nutrition is important. Investing in the health and the wellness of your employees is important. And so I just want to give just a couple of things. I know we were going to kind of talk a little bit general, but I want to give you guys also a couple of little tangible things that you can take home. So when it comes to nutrition and brain health, it's a matter of really a couple of things: what you eat, when you eat it, and how you're eating. And when I think about how you're eating, I'm talking about the environment that you're eating in. Are you eating at your desk in front of your computer? Are you eating on the go? Are you grabbing and going? That's your environment. And so these things are important, not just in the moment, but they really start the day before. And you and I were talking about that. Your ability to function at work doesn't just depend on, sorry, my computer went to sleep of all things.
Yes.
All right. So it doesn't just depend on what you're doing that day, but it starts the night before. What did you eat before you went to sleep? Because that's going to affect how you slept overnight, how you feel in the morning, and your ability to kind of engage and be productive throughout that day. Um, so again, it's important what you're eating, what time you're eating it, and how you're eating it, and when and what that environment looks like. um, Nighttime eating, and there's been studies that shows eating things that are higher in sugar at night is going to affect your productivity the next day. We all know about brain fog. We all know we've had days where it's like, man, I just feel sluggish. I just don't feel the great. And sometimes we can't really pinpoint to what it is, but oftentimes it has a lot to do with what you ate, or maybe that you didn't sleep well, but you didn't sleep well because of what you ate the night before. And so I think sometimes food can be very confusing. People don't know what to eat. Is meat good? Is it bad? Do I eat carbs? Do I not eat carbs? I'm busy. I have, a family. I can't be cooking all these different meals. So I think food can get very, very confusing. And so I try to make it simple for folks in terms of you should be knowing what it is that you're eating. You should be able to look at the ingredients and eat whole foods. If you look at the back of a Twinkie, right, there's a whole bunch of words that you can't understand. There's, I think, 20 different ingredients, right? But if you look at a head of broccoli, you can very much tell what's in it. So sometimes, just to be safe, I'll say to my patients, listen, I want you to think about putting food in your body that you know what it is. You can look at it and you can identify what it is. And those are sometimes just the easiest way to eat foods that will make us feel well. Start the night before. Now, do you have many tips that you share, with your clients in terms of with their nutrition, or just kind of really the importance of optimizing it so that you can do the work that?
Yeah. So nutrition is your wheelhouse, not mine. So I will defer to you for all of those things, but I will say yes, right? So, it's not just eating at nighttime, but it's also what you eat at lunchtime too. That will completely disrupt your day. So when people tell me like, oh man, I can't focus at work and I'm always getting distracted. And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what did you eat for lunch? Oh, I didn't really eat lunch. I was so busy. I grabbed a candy bar and just downed that. I'm like, well, you know what you just did to your brain because now it's not optimized for the afternoon. And already we start to slow down, right, towards the afternoon anyways. And so we do have to be really mindful about the sorts of things that we are eating. And I think that, again, people do know this, right? Just like how they know, what is that stat? What do people say? That like people are like one paycheck away from financial ruin, right? And it's the same thing with health, right? Like you are one health event away from your life completely changing. And so nutrition is just such an important aspect to that, to protect your brain, and not just in the workplace, but just longevity in general, right? And so, absolutely, the nighttime eating, the nutritious aspects of that, we cover some of that, but it is mostly after the fact, right? When you're feeling the burden of work and the stress and the burnout. Now, what are we going to do with our brain when it doesn't want to cooperate with us?
And I think with food, one of the biggest things that people can do to help their nutrition to then overall improve their function is planning. Because like you said, sometimes people really don't plan, and then we end up being very random, and we grab things, we grab the inflammatory foods, we grab the things that are quick, that are in a bag, or because they're at work and our employer is thinking they're doing something great for us by making these snacks available. I remember one employee was telling me at their job, they get unlimited soda, right? So sometimes these things are very accessible. And so you grab what's accessible. And then because you didn't plan, that's what you kind of had to do. But then now the quality of your work kind of suffers, and just how you feel and your energy and your ability to really engage really suffers. And I think it can show up, like you said, in different ways. Lack of motivation. People could say, oh, this person's just like not really a team player, but maybe that's not it. Maybe they're just not eating well, not eating well. And so it doesn't allow them to show up in their best way. So food's super important. I'm seeing a bunch of comments. Let me go here and just grab a bunch of comments. Employees will often master health issues and get worse before they seek help, which is even more costly. Very, very true. Low norepinephrine in the brain looks like low motivation and behavior. Someone echoing your amazing comment. Good food is good medicine. What we consume affects bodily and cognitive outcomes. So all these things, super, super important.
Yeah. And so I do want to just kind of point out one of the comments here that talks about health issues getting worse, will often get worse before they seek help. And that's also part of this too, right? Is that there still is not a lot of psychoeducation around well-being. I know there is a lot of so many wellness things and go mental health. And listen, I'm an advocate. You'll see me posting about that consistently. But there is a lot more to that. The stigma is still really there. And so part of this, right, is really understanding, and knowing when to kind of pick up some of these subtle signs. Like when your employee first started working, were they on top of it and super detail oriented and engaging in meetings and doing all of these things? And now there's been kind of like a drop off, right? And then when you start to say, hey, is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, everything's fine, right? There's no like divorces and deaths and traumatic things that are happening. The next question to me is like, okay, so what's going on? And they may not even know what's going on, right? Because as soon as we have low vitamin D levels, low vitamin B12, low everything, ferritin levels, all of these things will impact your ability to be laser focused, the ability to absorb, the ability to learn, all of those sorts of things, right? And so sometimes it's also about trying to pick it up for your employees. I mean, I know that's probably not your job, but if you can pick it up and assistance in ahead of time, you're more likely to have a healthy employee, a healthy workspace, and just have more productive outcomes in general.
That's good. And, you know, right, as someone who's objective and can kind of observe, they would be a great person to say, hey, I've noticed something different. And I think it's another reason why I really encourage people to get their wellness exam every year, because those things that you just mentioned can be just, you know, discovered. And a lot of times people will only go to the doctor if they feel sick, right? It's like, I'm feeling fine. I feel fine. So I didn't go to the doctor. I just go if I have a cold or something like that. I can't go to the doctor. I only have sick days. I don't have a day, you know, and so I, you know, encourage team members to consider having wellness days, a day where you can do the things to invest in your well-being, the things that will make you well, like having your comprehensive physical and having all those things checked, talking with your doctor and you know, talking about, hey, I just feel a little bit different. I don't feel as well as I did. I have a new job, and I think they've mentioned about my performance, and I just want to talk to you and see what you think about it. So really encouraging folks to seek help, you know, when they want to just, again, feel well and feel optimized. And it doesn't have to be that you feel really bad, but that you just are not as well as you could be.
Yeah. Dr. Powell, you had mentioned earlier about like, you know, employers like, you know, putting snacks out thinking they're helping. It's like, it's not, it's hurting everybody. But we have a question here. And Dr. Shelley has asked, what do you suggest employers do with regard to healthy snack access? Any ideas on that?
Right. So I love that. So some of the things, so when I see that basket of naughty treats, I'll take some apples and oranges and I'll put them right there in the basket. And you won't believe it, but people really grab them. They grab them. They're available. People like that. I love bags of nuts. Obviously, you want to kind of think about things that can kind of sit out and maybe not be refrigerated, things that are individually wrapped so people don't have to think about germs and things like that. But I love anytime we can incorporate fruits, vegetables. Once in a blue moon, we'll have smoothies delivered to the office, which I think is great.
I love that.
It's very easy to do. I'll do it sometimes for the office, a smoothie or an acai bowl. You can get it on Uber Eats. There's usually always some kind of discounts, but that makes people feel well. And that's the great pick me up. People are excited about that. Again, water, making sure water is easily accessible, filtered water, because some people aren't going to remember to bring a bottle and things like that. But if you have something where people can fill up their water bottle, we have at work, I got everybody these kind of big jug water bottles that kind of measure how much you've drinking by a certain period of the day, until that really encourages. And where are we at? Are we at the 2 o'clock mark? And so little things like that just encourage, just a good camaraderie, but then also it's like you're doing something that's good for you. So I think that's great. Once in a while we'll get lunch ordered. So planning that in advance and thinking about some healthy options are always great. We have a refrigerator and a freezer at work, so it allows us to do certain things. Yesterday we had, in the 100-degree weather, we had some organic fruit popsicles, and that was great. We were so excited about the popsicles, and it was a great way to end our day. And it was a healthy snack, right? Very minimal sugar, lots of fruit. And it was, again, a great way to end the day. Herbal teas, I think are great. In a tea station is really easy to have. You have some tea bags, you have some individual little honey sticks, or maybe some lemons.
Honey sticks.
I love a little bit of honey as long as it's raw and filtered. And organic local honey. I love a little sweetness, better than, some white sugar. And I like to make, I think tea is a great thing to have. I think coffee is even fine to have too. We have coffee in our office as well. I think we just have to be mindful of what we're putting in the coffee, because coffee in and of itself has some great health benefits. It's usually all of the stuff we put in it that can't stop those health
That's
benefits.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add to that, right, just in terms of how people behave and just the psychology of snacks, is that people want things easy, right? And so while you could be out there, you could put like a thing of grapes, but if it's out of that package, it's kind of like, okay, are these grapes washed? Do I have to wash them? And then my hands clean? Like, depends on your workplace too, right? Like, you have to wash your hand? Like, how easy is it to have that healthy snack? And so sometimes even like putting apples is a great option, but having like pre-sliced and pre-washed apples in a little package for you, they're more likely to take that and they're more likely to eat that because it's easy. So whatever you're thinking about when you're thinking about incorporating nutrition into the workplace, you always want to be thinking about, is this going to be easy for me and for them, right? Mara has a question. Sample days or prepping the night before or optimizing decision making the next day. I'll talk about optimizing decision making and encoding information in just a moment. And I think, in terms of like prepping the day before. So if this is for you and your own thing, I mean, Dr. Powell, I don't know if you want to take that question about optimizing and prepping the night before, sample days or something.
Oh, for food. Oh yeah. I'm all about a prep. Again, you want to plan, because I think that's where a lot of the lack of planning, I think, is what leads oftentimes to just making not the best decisions, because again, you didn't plan, you didn't prep, and then you're at work, you get hungry or hangry. Everybody is doing an order at the, fast food place. And so that's kind of how we sometimes can fall into a little bit of a, in a bad kind of pattern. So I love to prep the night before and make it easy. Make just a little extra for dinner. Make a little, and I'm really bad at it sometimes, because I'll make sure my husband's food is prepped. I'll make sure my toddler's food is prepped. And then I'll be like, oh, dang, I didn't do myself, and so I have to be really intentional. And I'll say, Lauren, no, take 15 more minutes and prep something for yourself, because your tomorrow self is going to appreciate it so much. And again, don't make it difficult. I always tell people, if you don't love cooking, that's okay. Like, let's get some things put together. Let's grab a rotisserie chicken. Let's grab some frozen veggies that we can throw in the oven. Like, let's just make it easy. It doesn't have to be a Thanksgiving or, dinner, this big thing. Let's like make it easy on ourselves. Right. So that's my advisement.
Yes. And, we'll be talking a lot more about this too. At the end of July, we'll be holding like a longer workshop on like the specific things that we need to do to bring nutrition into the workplace. And I'll be talking a lot more about kind of the brain aspects. I did want to, if it's okay, to just go into this just a little bit. And so what happens now, like after the fact, right? Now that you've eaten the chips and the cheese at nighttime, right? And now it's the next day and you're working. What are you doing to kind of optimize brain functioning, right? And so there's a couple things, right? So Mara, you had mentioned optimizing decision making the next day. I'm actually going to take it a couple steps back and talk about encoding, which we don't typically talk about that a lot, right? People, when they are thinking about the thinking issues that they're having at work, they're like, man, I can't remember anything. And I'm always seeking to re-clarify. And the problem actually starts with encoding, right? And encoding, basically, when I'm talking about encoding, I'm talking about getting that first piece of information into your brain. Okay. So our brains are always encoding and they're always filtering. Your encoding system is basically like, this information is important. This information is not important, not important, not important, important. However, just given our culture, North American culture and work, we're consistently being bombarded with information all of the time, even with like a flashing of the light from your phone or your tablet or whatever. It's incoming information that your brain now has to filter out. And that starts to wear on folks, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you have ADHD or not, it wears on your brain. And so one of the things I recommend people to do in terms of like encoding is basically what Lauren's been saying all along, which is to plan, right? And so let's say you're in a meeting. So this is a strategy that I tell people to use when they're entering meetings. It's something simple and it's not rocket science, but this is what it is. It's literally handing out an agenda. It's handing out an agenda. Only 37% of companies use agendas in their meetings for a variety of reasons. One, they're going into the meeting seat of their pants. They don't know what they're going to talk about. Two, the meeting is like so regular that They're just like, whatever it is, what it is. But when you have an agenda, what that basically does is that warms up the brain for not only yourself, but everybody else that's in that meeting. And then they know what to expect. They know what they can talk about, and they can orient themselves into giving you good content or for whatever you're meeting about, right? At the end of the meeting, takeaways. Okay, so Bobby, you said you're going to do this. When are you going to have this done? Okay, so by the time you have the next meeting, there's no, let's circle back and we're working on this. It's like, okay, this was the deadline. Let's kind of move forward with it, right? So this is not just about problem solving, but also like the productivity of it and getting that information in. And so to get that information in, when you hand out that agenda, people are easily more able to access the information you're giving them in that meeting because they know ahead of time what they're talking about. Does that make sense? I kind of went a little bit there. But
that's good. And you're right. That is so basic, but it is so helpful. And I know I appreciate it. I always appreciate knowing what's the plan for, what we're going to be discussing today. And then I appreciated someone participating in the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good. And I think it's great for leaders to take time to do and to set that tone and for your brain to go through and say, what are we going to be talking about today? I think that's super important.
Because brains are all different, right? There's some employees that you have that are amazing and charismatic and they're like ideas on the spot. But then you also have employees that are brilliant, but they need a second. They need a second to process, and giving them that agenda does actually help with that process as well as like the takeaways at the end. Okay, Mara says,
I don't know,
sound like
the conductor
and the coach combined. And the agenda is the music piece for your instrument. Interesting. Yeah. So, with the encoding aspect, right? The way the brain works, encoding, then you have your short-term memory, and then you have your long-term memory. The long-term memory at the work, does it matter? Not really. Projects are usually wrapped up in I would say a year or less. And if you're working on it, you're constantly re-engaging with it, which means most of it is staying in that short-term memory. But that's where the problem lies, is that if the encoding is off, it doesn't then get into that short-term memory store. And then that's when people are like, I don't remember. What did you say again? What was it that we talked about again? Because it never moved from encoding to short-term memory. And so it's how do we protect that encoding? Priming the brain and reminding yourself, reminding your employees of what is it that's going to happen helps soothe that process. So it gets from that encoding process right into that next stage of short-term memory where it should live for a long time before it enters long-term memory stores. Right? Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And, I love starting off meetings. If I know I have a meeting, sometimes we have these 7 a.m. meetings. I love to make sure I start that day off with some brain food, because some days that I fast in the morning, but I know if I'm doing something where I'm going to be engaging, with some folks and it's going to be kind of a longer morning, I love to start off with some brain food. And so oftentimes when we think about breakfast, breaking the fast, it really is the most important meal of the day. Whatever meal you're using to break your fast, whether that's breakfast or lunch, it's going to be super important. And I think sometimes it's easy to, or when we think about breakfast, oftentimes we think about those sugary things, the donuts, the bagels, the carbs, the French toast, the pancakes, all these super inflammatory foods. But if we can break our fast with something that's super nutritious, a healthy fat, some nice lean protein, some antioxidants, some fruit. I love berries with yogurt and some eggs. And that just, I challenge you to be your own test and kind of test how you feel and how your brain feels and how you feel throughout the day when you eat in certain ways, when you prep your food, when you plan your meals and you eat your meal, and you eat that throughout the day versus being kind of random and eating these different things. How do you feel throughout the day? How do you feel when you're in meetings? Do you feel like, oh man, is this over yet? Do you feel really sharp? Do you feel engaged? Do you feel just super on it? And that's just also a great way to just kind of see how you feel and what works for you in terms of your nutrition. Yes. Okay. So let's see, anything else you wanted to add to the encoding? I feel like some people had multiple things to say about it.
There's so much about encoding, right? Yes. So encoding, that's kind of the first step to just productivity, right? You can't remember what you're not paying attention to. And so anything that you can do to help with that process is what you're going to want to do. And so I don't know if this is kind of a little bit off topic, but this is, another intervention that I did want to mention is, oftentimes if we are feeling sluggish, and we are in a position where we need to do deep work in our work, or your employees need to do deep work in our work, there should be assigned time for that, right? And this is my puppy dogs and rainbows ideal world. It should be every single day, but realistically that can't happen. But I would recommend, I would encourage, and even dare you to try allowing, I would say, let's see here, the best time for deep work is in the morning, right?
Yes.
Early in the morning, we've heard like Tony Robbins and Melanie Robbins talk about their 4 a.m. and their 5 a.m. workouts. That's great. And that's super helpful. Do it. But for the 9 to 5 people, right, your best deep work area should be in the morning, right? And so and I'm not sure if you can speak a little bit too about fasting, but if you go into the morning, 9 o'clock you start, 9:30, from 9:30 to 11:30, or 9:30 to 11, no meetings, no interruptions, no nothing, and just work. If you're able to do that, and then the rest of the day, you take the emails, you take the phone calls, you do all of the other things, but having that deep work can also add to the clarity for the rest of the day, betters your decision making and all of that. And the reason why it's so important to have scheduled deep work is because the higher we go in our positions, the more difficult it is to find that time. And we're trying to do deep work between our meetings of half an hour. It's not going to work. If you have anything to do with the visionary process, the creative process, analytical conceptualization process, you can't do that in half an hour. Stop trying to do that. It doesn't work. I have the research to prove it. So allowing yourself to have, or allowing your employees to have like a no meeting zone in the morning will also be really helpful to adding into that clarity. If you're coming in like with that sluggishness and you're having that brain fog and all those sorts of symptoms.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, when it comes to fasting, I love intermittent fasting. I think I read that the average American is eating between 11, 12 hours out of the day. And if you think about it, a day is 24 hours. And so if you're eating throughout the overwhelming majority of the day, that means you're kind of waking up and eating throughout the day, and then eating before you go to sleep. It doesn't really give your body much time to rest and digest and kind of process all the calories that it's taken in. And so I wouldn't say, the intermittent fasting is a one hard rule that fits for everybody. I think certain conditions, autoimmune things, and studies with women, it may not be as favorable in some women than others. But outside of those exceptions, I think it's just a great way to see how your body functions off, and I also think we get into the habit of eating, and you ask yourself, are you really hungry? Am I hungry, or am I eating just out of a routine of eating? So I love intermittent fasting. There've been studies about it increasing productivity, increasing longevity, great for your immune system. It's just great for overall function. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There's a lot of different ways to play with it. I ask people just to start simple, and maybe just that first meal that you would usually eat, maybe back it up an hour and just see how you feel until you get to a really good window. And it's just a great way to also just overall consume less calories if you do it right. I mean, if you eat all the foods that you would have eaten in an 11-hour window in a 6-hour window, then that doesn't really work. But the idea also is that you're consuming less calories. I can say that my husband, he ate the exact same food, but just ate it in a window. He ate it he broke his fast at 11 a.m. and then he stops eating by 6. So a 7-hour window. He didn't change anything he was eating in terms of the quality. He would still eat his pizza, and he felt significantly better, and he lost like 15 pounds in a month, which is amazing. So it just kind of goes to show you like just kind of the overconsumption that can happen, and him no more of the late night eating, which is kind of the thing that would affect him a lot. And he's a night owl, and he's a music producer, so has to be he's kind of one of those up creative nighttime people. And so kind of giving him and shifting that window and giving him other tools to help him stay up so he can still be creative and productive.
Absolutely. It's assiduous too. I'm not sure of the age group that is here, and so some of you might already be aware, and if you're not, you will know once you hit a certain age, you can no longer have cake at night. You will wake up with a hangover. You'll literally feel it. And so the nutrition, especially in the evenings, is so important. It'll absolutely compound and affect your day the next day. So, yeah. I just want to add that in as we're talking about your husband.
Dr. Jade, and people think like, oh, I feel good, right? But it's really just that sugar high. It's not that you're really feeling good, because as that glucose spikes, it's going to come down, and it's going to come down pretty quickly. And then it's going to affect your rest of your evening and your morning. So it's really not good. It masks you thinking that it's helping you, but it's just
and that reminds me of like when we go out for, team lunches and those kinds of things too, is, if if our team is going out for a team lunch, we're done for the rest of the day, because what ends up happening is we end up going to a restaurant, people will eat whatever it is at the restaurant, and all of those foods are typically processed and all of those things, your stomach has to work double time to do that. So what it does, it draws the blood from your brain down to your stomach to help with the processing. And so what does that end up doing to you? Now you feel sleepy, right? Now you want to go to sleep because all the blood is in your stomach instead of in your brain, right? And so we also want to be kind of mindful of how we want to encourage like team cohesion and all of that stuff using food, which can be used, but just in a way maybe that is a little bit more helpful to work dynamics. Yeah.
And some people just don't know. I did, this was like pre-pandemic, maybe 2019. I did a group kind of cooking class for the employees at Bloomingdale's, and they had like a little kitchen set up. I divided everybody in groups. I gave them a little grocery food list and recipe, and I did pre-prepping for them. And we each cooked our food, and some raw, some cooked. And it was just a great way to show people quick, easy food that you could have in the middle of the day that, taste amazing, but then was also good for your body. You didn't have that feeling of, now I need to go lay down. It was, I feel great and I'm ready to continue about our day. And I think we all can relate to that. If you think about the holidays, I know we do it on the holidays and we overindulge, but it's really not normal. It's, it's not normal to want to go lay down after you eat. It's just not normal. So I know we're a little bit over, but I wanted to get into a few other things. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just answer this last question because it's like up on my screen? Let me just answer this one question. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So it is normal to feel this deep work, that urge for deep work in the morning. And in the afternoon, I tell people, like, if you love to do the busy work, then do it in the afternoon, because what you're doing, it's now an automatic pilot. It's not as cognitively loaded. And so you're able to do that. When you start doing it in the morning, the busy work and the emails and the answering and it's hard to now find that focus for deep work, because now you've kind of expended that energy. And so that I would keep everything as is. Creative work, I will die on the hill for this, but you should always do it in the morning. There's some people who will fight me and be like, my best time was at nighttime. I'm like, no, it is not. That is not according to research. You might have a built up time, but your circadian rhythm and all of that is, I'm curious what that looks like, because when people find like the second energy at night, then they're not going to bed till 2. Like there's a whole cascade of events there. But typically on average, deep work, yes, is normal in the morning. And then that busy work, that automatic stuff, it's easier to get that stuff done and out of the way post 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So yes, Dr. Powell, please. There's
Makes so much sense, Dr. Jada, and I hope that makes you feel better about that, because I know she's a very, she loves her creative time, and then she has to do the admin stuff, which I know she doesn't love to do, but it is more of what you just said, like this kind of just emails, the phone calls, the things that don't take as much, cognitive energy, I guess, like you said, to do.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. I'm glad you guys are enjoying all this good stuff. Okay, Dr. Nicole, I wanted you to just touch a little bit briefly before we wrap up about workplace efficiency and procrastination.
What? You want to talk about that at the end?
Okay, wait, let me shorten it. Let me shorten it. I feel like we've talked a bit about being efficient. So what about folks who say they procrastinate and it, maybe it works for them because at the end of the day, they get the job done? Is that okay? Is that not okay?
So I know that we're going to talk about this in our workshop in July, more detailed about what is allowable and what's kind of a little bit too lenient, where it's actually going to hurt the company and hurt kind of just productivity. But I will say, when it comes to procrastination and, working under pressure, it's true. Okay. So there is this research study about stress and motivation, and there's this curve of stress when people are given an assignment and they're told, hey, get this to me whenever you can. Whenever you can means never. Right? Until you ask again, right? It means nothing, right? It gives you no impetus and initiation to do that thing, right? So that's not great, right? So then you have like, okay, give this to me in 2 weeks. It's better, but now we're going up the hill, right? Give this to me in a week. Now that's actually the best time, right? Because now people are like, I have to get this done. This is important. It creates urgency. Yeah. And so people are motivated to do it. And so that's typically what people are talking about when it comes to procrastination. Like, oh, the last minute. The procrastination becomes a problem and a little bit toxic when you're doing it literally the night before at like 1 o'clock in the morning. That's too much procrastination. And so what ends up happening is if it's like, oh, I have this due in 4 hours and I'm nowhere near done. Now you've crossed that peak, crossed that bell curve, and you're on the other side. This is where we want to take a nap. This is where we're going to go scroll and start self-sabotaging a little bit. And so listen, doing things a little closer to the due date is actually probably a little bit healthier, but doing it too close to the due date, that's where it becomes unhealthy, right? And so there is some fine lines that need to be balanced. And I know that we go over it in detail. So I'm not like no procrastination at all, but you do have to be really mindful of like how much space you're giving yourself and your brain to actually work on these things. Too much space is not, too much time is not helpful either.
Yeah, right. So it's not either extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
Also for me, I used to be someone that thought that I needed lots of time to get certain things done. And then I had a kid, and then I felt like I had no time. So then I had to really figure out how much time do I need. Mm-hmm. And I realized it wasn't about so much of the quantity of time rather than like the quality, meaning let me get rested the night before. Let me wake up. Let me eat something well. Let me spend some time outdoors. Let me get some natural sunlight. And then I know I can get this task done really well, like very efficiently, because of all these things that I've done to kind of prepare myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think the whole not enough versus, too much time versus very little, it's also about like that quality of time that we're allowing ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So I know that's been a lot, you guys. We've talked so much, and there's so much more. We literally just didn't even graze. We didn't even graze. Like you guys, we have paid stuff we didn't even get to. So ambitious. But we knew that this would happen. So Dr. Nicole and I are going to be hosting a workshop. I know she's mentioned it throughout our time together. It's going to be on July 25th, and it's going to be at 12 to 1:30. So we've 90 minutes because it's going to be much deeper, very specific, specific protocols, strategies. I'm going to do a little cooking in during our time together. So again, who is it for? I always like to say, like, who are these things for? And I feel like if you're an employer, a manager of people, and you really kind of have bought into what we've been saying, and that the wellness and the well-being of your team members matters, like you generally really believe that and want to invest in their health and their well-being, and you see how it's so mutually beneficial, this is who that's for. We're going to be going, again, deep dive into optimizing, brain health, cognition, performance, working better, and what are different things that we can do using both nutrition and some strategies from Dr. Nicole. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add that I missed to that?
I just want to actually add, just because we did want to make this more of an intimate workshop, and where we could see people and they could see us. Well, yeah, I know you can see us, but I can't really see you guys. But the first 3 or 4 people that do kind of sign up for this workshop, what we would like to do is also do some hot seat strategizing with you. And so you can kind of bring in some of the issues that maybe you're having in your company, and we can say, okay, this is literally what you need to do. So you have customizable takeaways to kind of implement immediately, right? Whether it's nutrition, cognition, all of the things that we're going to be talking about. So I hope to see you guys there. I'm excited about it. We will have to pare it down based on this one, but that's fine.
Yes. So if you go to my website right now, I think that's just going to be the easiest way, drlaurenpowell.com. And then if you go to shop, and you click courses, you'll see the course there. I'll definitely put the link in the chat that way on LinkedIn. That way you guys can just click it and go right there. We're limiting the spots for now because, again, we want it to be deep. We want to go make it very intimate and make sure everybody walks away with so much goodies. We're going to be doing the hot seat for the first few people that sign up. And so that's it for now. We thank you guys so much for joining us and spending your lunch break. Maybe I hope this was your lunch break. I hope you were taking a break and eating something amazing. And I guess we'll see you at the workshop. Bye, everybody.